everybody, this is the Nerdish Queen, known as Bliss. I am coming back at you again today with the third segment of a two-part series known as Breaking Down Mental Illness. My focus is to diminish the negative stigmas of mental illness in African American communities and also other people of color communities. I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So I won't take up too much time. We are going to start today with mood disorders and suicide. So first we're gonna start with depressed mood. Being depressed is not really the same thing as having a depressed mood disorder. So at some point in our lives, we're all going to feel depressed. When people are feeling down or low, they're going to experience a depressed mood. And this is kind of temporary. So it's kind of like listening to the song by Frankie Beverly and Maze, or Maze featuring Frankie Beverly, whichever you prefer. Joy and Pain. Joy and pain. I like sunshine and rain. So it's like that. So everybody needs a little bit of hurt, a little bit of joy to grow. So but depression, however, covers a variety of negative moods and behavior changes. Some are normal mood fluctuations, the others meet the definition of clinical problems. The mood change may be temporary or long-lasting. It may range from a relatively minor feeling of melancholy to a deeply negative view of the world and an inability to function effectively. And some mood disorders, let's look at some mood disorders, like dysthymic disorder. People with this disorder suffer long-term depression. They just feel like nothing can change how they feel. Now, dysthymia is defined as a condition characterized by mild and chronic depressive symptoms. A person with this disorder is at risk for developing major depression as well. Now, major depressive disorder. Now, this disorder, a person with this disorder has experienced one or more major depressive episodes without manic or hypomanic episodic episodes. A major depressive episode is when a person is in a depressed mood or has lost interest or pleasure in just about all activities. There is also weight loss or weight gain without being on a diet, sleep problems, fatigue, inability to think clearly, feelings of worthlessness, frequent thoughts of death or suicide, agitation, or mood behaviors, and these are going to last longer than 2 weeks. Now, here is where parents, you are really going to want to pay attention to your child with a major depressive disorder. So that you can see if their mood is changing. So you really want to, pay attention here. And I'm going to go into some stuff a little later on that I think is really important. Because you don't want to, you want to pry into you want to get all in their business. You don't want to be their friend. They don't have any business in your house. So I'm gonna get into that again a little later in a different slide. So okay, let's go ahead and go into bipolar disorders. Bipolar disorders were once called manic depressive disorders. It is a mental illness involving episodes of mania and depression. People affected experience mood swings from overly high and irritable to sad and hopeless and back again. However, there are periods of normalness in between these episodes. There are people who are never diagnosed with bipolar because their symptoms are often taken to be something else. Now, pay attention right here because here are some things that throw up red flags for me. So, usually misdiagnosed as attention or hyperactivity disorder. People's first symptom is usually depression. Only when people experience the mania are they diagnosed with bipolar. Now, get this. Symptoms usually appear when a person is young. The age of onset is usually adolescence and early 20s. So you really want to pay attention to your kids so that you know that what they're going through is not just some teenage stuff, but it could actually be bipolar disorder. And BB Campbell Moore, or BB Moore Campbell, I'm sorry, maybe I always switch up her name, and she's a very good writer, and I love her writing. But she wrote a really, really good book called 72 Hour Hold, and the character in the book, her daughter is actually dealing with bipolar disorder now. BB Moore Campbell, you know her daughter from playing in the sitcom with LL Cool J. But she started writing about mental illness because her daughter, not her daughter, I'm sorry, someone in her family was going through a mental illness, and I rest in peace to her. I was really very happy that she did that. This is before I even started acknowledging that I had a mental disorder. I knew I had one, but this is before I acknowledged it. And, I say she did something very courageous. So, but here are some mood disorders, some moods that are found in bipolar, and I'm not going to go over them. You can read it yourself. But it's mania, hypomania, depression, mixed mania, cyclothymia, and rapid cycling. Now, suicide. Suicide is one of the top 10 causes of death in the U.S. Each year, more than 30,000 people die of suicide, and there are about over 500,000 attempted suicides. And, how many more deaths are there that are actually suicides but are ruled as something else, found to be something else, like drug overdoses, from people who normally use drugs, but then they say, well, maybe they took too much that day or that at that moment. I know this man, and I had saw him, and we talked for a little bit, and he just asked me how I was doing and what I was up to, and I let him know. I'm a pretty positive person. I don't hurt people. I've never hurt anybody. Never wanted to hurt anybody. But the most he ever asked me for from the time I knew him from being a little girl, the most he ever asked me for was a ride. But he had been trying to get in touch with me, and he called me, and he said, look, my daughter, who was a teen at the time, and she was really on her own. But he said, my daughter is over there. You know, I need you to look out for her for me. You know, if you see her, you know, stop her. You know, look out for her for me, please. And I told him, I said, no problem. Of course I will. You know, of course. And when I saw her, I let her know who I was. I told her, I gave her my phone number, I gave her my address, I let her know, you know, you come over anytime you want, you know, so when she did come over, when I did see her and she, did come over, you know, I let him know that she was okay, she's in good hands, you know, I got you, I got her, and, a few weeks later, he died of a drug overdose, so when I got that news, you know, it didn't really sit well with me. And I kind of started thinking that, not even thinking, I felt deeply that he killed himself. Because this man had never asked me for anything. You know, he had family that lived where I lived, and he could have asked his family to look out for his daughter, but he trusted me to look out for his daughter. You know, so when you do something like that, those are signs of, you know, those are suicide. There are signs to look for in suicide, and you can go deeper into it. You know, so I'm just saying, and you know, even though it was ruled a drug overdose, you know, there are so many more, so much more. You know, that could be ruled, that's ruled something else, but how do we know? You know, so that's all I'm saying. You know, so, and we're gonna do mental illness and suicide. So, according to Saracen and Saracen, everyone who attempts suicide isn't mentally ill. Mental illness, particularly those with psychotic symptoms, greatly increase the probability of a suicide attempt. Parasuicide is a term used to describe suicidal behavior that does not result in death. But one study found that suicide is 100 times higher after a year of a parasuicide episode. Now, when I was suicidal, I was taking pills and ended up in the hospital, and I would get out the hospital and go back to smiling and going on about my business. And I think the second time, they were like, no. Matter of fact, I know I was suicidal, but I was crying and I couldn't stop, as I said in the last segment. And I was crying and I couldn't stop, and my psychiatrist was like, I'm not letting you. You can't leave here by yourself. And my grandmother was with me, but she was like, she was like, when you leave here, you go home, you get some stuff, and you have to go to the hospital. So, you know, that's an example of parasuicide. So, you know, that's an example of parasuicide. Okay, so here's some risk factors for suicide. You know, one is age. And under age, there are two groups that are at risk for suicide. One is adolescents and young adults, and the other is those over 70. For the U.S. population as a whole, suicide is the third most frequent cause of death for people of ages 10 to 14 and 15 to 24, and it climbs second place for 25 to 34, and then it declines to sixth place at ages 45 to 54 and ninth for ages 55 to 65. And second, second is sex. In the U.S., the suicide rates for men and women are different. Now, women make more suicide attempts, but men actually end up killing themselves. And firearms are a common method for suicide for both men and women. You gotta think it's quick and it's fast. And if somebody really, really, really wants to kill themselves, they're gonna use a gun to do it. And in the U.S., women do choose a far less lethal method for a drug overdose as a preferred method of suicide. Now, someone, and this is my own experience, someone who wants to just take the pain away. Some people think people commit suicide, threaten to commit suicide because they are looking for attention. No, they are looking for a way to take that pain away. They don't want to be a burden on other people, even though those people love them and they're telling them, look, I got your back, I'm here, call me, but sometimes when that pain sets in, it's in the middle of the night, like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and you don't want to call somebody at that hour. And it's just like, I don't want to be a burden to anybody. Maybe I should just end it all because, they are better off without me and they don't need me around, and, I'll be better off dead, and, so it's not even looking for attention. And I think people get it mixed up. They just want that pain to go away, and it's so strong that the pain, when someone is ready to commit suicide, that pain is so strong, that's all they can think about is taking that pain away. So it's not that they're looking for attention. And some other factors for suicide is race and ethnicity, cultural attitudes in some countries, and in some cultures, if shame is brought upon the family, they're like, go ahead, go kill yourself, go ahead, kill yourself, which I think is absolutely stupid. But that's in their culture, hopefully, we can change some things. But hopelessness and perfectionism, I think this is high on the socioeconomic level. I think people who make more money and who are very out there, have a lot of friends and who have something to prove, are going to kill themselves or commit suicide at a higher rate than people on a lower socioeconomic level. That's just my opinion, though. But life events and suicide. Then there's suicide contagion. There are copycat suicides. Okay. And people who are experiencing a psychotic episode think in an unorganized, irrational manner. Searson and Searson define psychotic disorder as a person altering perception, thoughts, or consciousness. These alterations are called hallucinations or delusions. Symptoms include disorganized speech and behavior, and it was also once known as madness, lunacy, or insanity. Now, schizophrenia. This psychotic disorder has the most severe impact on people's lives and the healthcare system. In the U.S., more than 2 million people suffer from this chronic disabling disease. Those affected will become severely and permanently disabled and dependent on public assistance funding. 10% of the people with schizophrenia are homeless and they live in an urban population. And about 1 in 4 patients with schizophrenia will try to kill himself or herself. 1 in every 10 will succeed. Those who choose suicide aren't much different than those in the general population who choose to commit suicide. People with schizophrenia who kill themselves have additional characteristics not typical of others who kill themselves. They are young and college educated, have a course of illness that is chronic and can get worse or improve. They are afraid of mental disintegration, have a non-delusional and negative view concerning the future. And here are some subtypes of schizophrenia. Again, I'm only going to read the subtypes and you can read the characteristics. Paranoid type, disorganized type, catatonic type, undifferentiated type, and residual type. Now, here's some other psychotic disorders. There's schizoaffective disorder. And for schizoaffective disorder to be diagnosed, according to Saracen and Saracen, delusions or hallucinations must occur even when symptoms of depression or manic mood are not present. There must also be an uninterrupted period of illness or either major depressive episode, a manic episode, or an episode containing both mania and depression occurring during the same period when the person meets the criteria for schizophrenia. The mood characteristic must be present during both the acute or active periods of the disorder and periods when acute symptoms have subsided. And a rare one, delusional disorder, has an annual incidence of about 1 to 3 new cases per 100,000 persons, and its cause is unknown. The DSM-4-TR defines delusional disorder. It includes what was formerly known as paranoia, but it is not limited to delusions with paranoid accusatory elements. Now, I want to let you know what book I referenced the most. I referenced this book the most. It's Abnormal Psychology. I took this course. So I do kind of know a little bit what I'm talking about. But I just want to say to you out there, you know, try to be there for your family. You know, try to listen to them. Try to find out as much about their disease as you can. And try to help them out. But I also want to say to the person, to the people that don't have any family or have family and their family is not there for them. Sometimes you got to do it yourself. Sometimes you got to be your own motivator. Sometimes you have to pick yourself up out of that bed and take it one step at a time, one day at a time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. I grew up around a certain side of my family, and I kind of thought we were close, but I soon found in my 20s that we weren't as close as I thought we were. I had to sit and really think about when I was in my when before 13, when I was younger, how my cousins, and then you mimic, you mimic your parents sometimes. I mean, not all of them did this, but they would tell me, the kids, would tell me to, I'd say something, we'd all be having an opinion about something, and they look at me and be like, shut up. And soon, as I got older, I started figuring out why they want me to shut up. you know what I'm saying makes sense. So, and you know as I got older, I'm like, I'm gonna just sit back, and I'm not gonna argue with them about what makes sense, and I'm just go ahead. I'm not going there. So, but as I got older, I could be myself around, my other family. I could be myself around my friends. Why can't I be myself around this family? This family I grew up around. I dropped everything that I did for this family. They would call me, for a ride. I dropped everything that I did. And so I met a guy one day, and he's like, why do you do that? You don't need to do that. They're working on your time. You're not working on their time. So, if you're going to do something for them, then they got to wait. And I started seeing how true that was. And, I started valuing my own time. So I'm like, okay, And then one day I just happened to be in the car with a cousin. And we were talking about something very political. And I knew facts on this because I, had been keeping up on it. I knew straight facts. And I listened for a while. And I didn't say anything. So then I said something. I'm like, here it is. This is the facts. You're wrong. You're not right. This is the facts. And we got into a debate. I didn't look at it as an argument, which arguments aren't bad. All arguments aren't bad. But we got into a debate. And I thought everything was okay. I didn't think there was a problem at all. So then I get a call from her mother. And her mother's telling me, how it's always females that can't get along. One female always has to be the one. And, all females are supposed to get in line with each other. And, I'm like, so I knew what she was doing. So I'm like, okay, and I just listened. And then so she's saying that men can hang together and there can be a man, and that man is going to follow, if one man says something, the other men are going to agree. And I'm like, whatever. And then she says something out of the blue. And she's like, because she raised all her kids. Meaning that my mother did not take care of me, which is not true. Not entirely true, because I lived with my mother on and off. But if she just doesn't know the reason that happened, So, but she's me and her daughter are the same age, and she's rubbing this in my face, But from the same woman and her family, her sisters and brothers, not brothers, excuse me, but from her sisters, I used to hear when I was little, she's fat, and why, and my father used to pick me up and bring me around them. I don't know why he's bringing her here. So this is stuff that I had to hear from my family, my close family, and and I had to learn to forgive them. These same family members, when I was in my 20s, they asked me to do something for them. And, I did it, without hesitation, because I love my family, loved my family. But I had to learn to walk away. I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. I just had to learn to move on. I had to learn to be that flower and grow. I had to learn to, bring some sunshine my way without them. So sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to, be courageous enough to walk away from your family. If your family situation is not working for you, you have to be courageous enough to, just say goodbye. And it hurts sometimes. Sometimes it'll make you cry because you have to walk away from your family. And just because they're your family doesn't mean that you have to stick around and be disrespected and be hurt by your family. Sometimes you have to walk away, and you know what? It's okay. I promise you it's okay. It brings you peace. I am all for repairing families. I have a degree in communications, and I've studied conflict. I've studied moral repairs. I've studied these things. But sometimes it won't work. I tried with my family to make it work, to talk about generational curses. You would have thought that I said that everybody in my family was a demon or a devil, and when that's not what generational curses is about. And they did not understand what I said, and I'm like, okay, had it come from another person, it would have been fine, but it came from me, so it was not perceived. And I understand that. One reason why this happened is because I grew up. My grandparents, when they took care of me, they spoiled me. My mother, I came to live with my grandparents because my mother, she was young when she had her kids, and she just could not financially take care of all of us, and me being the only girl, with her working all the time, and watch me and go to work and focus on work and worry about me being in the house. And she was right, because I was actually sexually abused by her boyfriend's son, and she didn't know anything about it until I was older, but she had a feeling, so she allowed me to come and live with my grandparents, my paternal grandparents. So what this woman who said this, what she didn't realize is what was going on is she just rubbed this all in my face about me not living with my mother. I had got used to living with my grandparents, so sometimes you gotta walk away from your family when they start doing stuff to hurt you, and you gotta forgive them, not for them, for you, and sometimes even for them, because sometimes you gotta realize that, and I'm all for bringing the black family together, families together, but sometimes it's broken, and you want to repair it, but you're not the person to repair it, and you got to go and heal yourself, so, but that's what I wanted to say for now. I will definitely be back. I will be researching the stigmas. That's what the part 3 is going to be about. It's going to be about the stigmas, how the stigmas came along, and I found some research on that, and I can't wait to dig into it. And also, I'm probably going to do something a little different. I think I want to do something different. I'm not going to tell you because I don't know. So, I don't know when I'm going to post it, but I definitely will be back in between. So, you know how I do. Peace, love, and live blissful. Mwah.